There's something laughably ironic about having a 400-pound coward and draft-dodging moron institute a policy that automatically registers all men from the ages of 18 to 25 for the draft. If you haven't heard, there's several reports out that indicate that the process for registering for Selective Service is going to be fully automated in December. And that means that any male who is a legal resident in the U.S. is going to be automatically registered for the draft. Now, let's think about this for a second. The government is automatically registering any legal male for the draft between the ages of 18 to 25. And this is the same government that says that it's impossible to automatically register anybody that is of legal voting age for the vote. But that's a story for another day. What's interesting about this particular policy is that it's coming from a regime that is stocked full of privileged white cowards who have never served a day in their life. With the exception of the guy that likes to drink whiskey on the job, this administration is full of people who have never served and is full of people whose kids have never served. But they're more than willing to pull the lever on a policy that forces your kids to potentially serve in a war of their own make. Let's put this in the context of what's actually going on today. This regime has started a war of aggression with Iran and is losing badly. And now they've pulled the lever on instituting automatic registration for Selective Service that should go into effect by December of this year. What is that signaling? To me, it signals bigger things are brewing and more American lives, blood, and treasure are going to be lost in another Middle East adventure. And for whatever reason, the same people that were alive during the Bush adventures in the Middle East haven't learned a single thing. They ran on the fact that there were going to be no new wars, but now are starting wars all over the place. This regime has set a record for the amount of foreign conflicts that it's generated in less than 2 years. Now they've started another Middle East adventure. They swore it was going to be over in 48 hours, and 6 weeks later, we're still here. And now they've just activated a part of the infrastructure that allows for automatic registration of anybody that is of the legal age to serve. So what can we do about it? When we think about this automatic enrollment into the Selective Service process, maybe it's just an efficiency play, like the regime has stated, or maybe it's signaling something else. Let's keep in mind that during the Vietnam era, that engagement was supposed to only last a few weeks, and it was only supposed to be advisory in nature. And it ended up being one of the biggest quagmires that the U.S. had gotten itself involved in at the time. And the lessons of Vietnam weren't learned, and we ended up doing another 20-year adventure in the Middle East. And what are we looking at right now? We're looking at yet another Middle East adventure, a war of convenience that's been started by a regime that's trying to draw attention away from the fact that they're stocked full of pedophiles and child predators, but they don't want the attention focused on that, so they're starting another foreign adventure that could drag on for years, if not decades. And maybe this automatic enrollment process for the draft is a sign of things to come. And if it is a sign of things to come, I think it's prudent for parents, relatives, and people that might be eligible to be drafted to familiarize themselves with some of the practices of the Vietnam era. And one of those practices that everyone needs to get familiar with is the practice of fragging. And this practice involved enlisted men who would take fragmentation grenades and deploy those fragmentation grenades in and around their superior officers who were putting the enlisted men in positions of extreme danger. And when we think about the context of Vietnam, it was a war that no one wanted. It was a war that no one asked for. The billionaire class and the millionaire class exempted themselves and their children from participating in that war and serving in that war. So it was everyday Americans that had to pay the price for the decisions of billionaires. And it certainly looks like we are marching down that same path again when we look at Iran. So maybe one of the things that every parent and every citizen needs to become familiar with is the practice of the working class in exacting consequences for the people that were giving the orders. And if you're going to give an order that puts our sons and daughters' lives at risk, you shouldn't be exempt from accountability. And some of that accountability in the Vietnam era involved an unfriendly encounter with a fragmentation grenade. That's maybe a lesson that everyone needs to become familiar with, especially if this continues to escalate and we get dragged into another foreign adventure where it's the everyday average American that's paying the price for it while the billionaires collect the profits off of our blood and treasure.